And you should all have Gary now. I was going to say full frontal. That sounds a little bit rude. A little bit rude for a Sunday morning.
What sort of channel is this?
So, Gary, please take it away.
Lovely. Hello, everyone. Good morning, wherever you are in the world, really, because as we know, we have people from right across from America, right across the UK and into Europe as well. So lovely to see you all that have arrived today. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to get Rachel to take the camera down to my hand and I'll go through all the bits and pieces that you need around you while you make this. Okay, there we are. So we are going to make these lovely little egg cozies. So there's my one on my egg and put that to one side. So there's a whole range of sizes and different ones. You've got cockerels, hens, chickens, and we're going to make this little one in the middle here. So that's the pattern that you've been given. So this is the free little download for the pattern, just to make this little one, which fits quite handy over the egg, just like that, over your egg and egg cup, just like that. Okay. You've downloaded your pattern. So here's your pattern pieces, and it's got some also tells you what sort of fabrics you can use for the outer and for the inner, and some felt for the little details. So you've got your pattern, and hopefully, I know one of you've just only received your pattern, so hopefully you're probably busily cutting out as I'm talking now, but I'd like you to cut out all the little pieces that you've got. So you've had your like the main body of the chicken, which is there, and the main body also shows you where you place the little felt comb for the top of his head and his beak, and then you've got the inner part, which is like almost like that fits over the egg, so that's like its lining. And then you've got some decorative pieces. So you've got like a little heart that goes on the front there. You've got the beak, which is the little beak that goes there, so it's got the beak, and then you've got his little comb, this little felt comb to go on the top there. So you've got all those pieces. I cut out my pieces. Some of you may have cut out, some of you may be cutting as I'm speaking now. But what you need is, I've used just ordinary ticking for the main body of the chicken. And if you have a look, really, it's like an upturned bucket. It's like a bucket shape. It's not necessarily square. And if you think where the top of the bucket is, this is where the beak and the comb is going to be on there. I cut exactly the same again in some wadding or just some batting, really. Now, if you haven't got any batting, this is just going to give it like that sort of insulation cozy feel to it. You could use an old blanket, another piece of felt. I'm just trying to think what else you can do. I mean, even like those sort of fleecy blankets, or a fleece top that you're throwing away, you could cut and use that for insulation. So I've just cut out exactly two pieces, exactly the same size as that sort of main body bucket shape there. I've then cut out the lining. So I've cut out the lining. My lining, I've cut this out in just a bit of calico, but you might have some old sheeting, anything like that for an inner lining. It's quite nice to use a natural fabric if you've got it, but if you haven't, whatever you want to put inside. And of course, the lining is inside, and so it's not necessarily seen. So don't worry if you can't quite get the right color match or that you haven't got the right fabric. It's going to go inside, and it's just to sort of fit over that egg, so that's fine. I've cut out my felt pieces, so I've got one beak, one comb, and two hearts, because we've got a heart on each side of that. And that's really the first thing we need to do. So I'm going to keep my hearts to one side there, and I'm going to just take my outer fabrics like so. The other things I've got in front of me here is I've just got a couple of like threads. These are just embroidery threads, really, called perle, but you might have some colors like some DCM thread, cotton embroidery threads. And I'm going to use the yellow to be like, I'm going to go a decorative edge around the edge there. That one I've done here on that one is blue, but you can see I quite like the yellow because the yellow really stood out really well on the red, but entirely down to you what you put around the edge. You could, even if you haven't got embroidery threads, you could use just some ordinary just sewing thread if you've got nothing else. It's just to do a little bit of hand sewing around for the heart, to put the heart on the front and the back. I've got some black here because I'm going to do a little eye. I'm going to show you how to do a little French knot to make an eye there, but you might, instead of a French knot, you might sew on a button, or you might have a bead, or you can even you can get those little like toy eyes that you can put on as well. So that's down to you, and that's all the possibilities that, anything's possible for a little eye to give them a bit of character. So I've got those. Now I'm going to sew the main body up with just sewing thread. Now you can sew this up by hand. It's obviously going to take you a little bit longer if you're sewing by hand, but it is a small project that you could use hand stitches to sew the whole thing up. It's just going to take you longer. I'm going to use my sewing machine, and if any of you have got your sewing machines with you, hopefully you'll be able to use them in this hour that we're doing this workshop. Now, I would suggest using a similar thread to, like this is white to go with the ticking and to the calico inside. Now, for your benefit, I'm going to use black thread to sew it up so that you can see when I've sewn stitches and seams, so you'll be able to see exactly where I've sewn. So I'm just using black thread today for the benefit of all of you in your Zoom sessions, so you can see it really clearly where my seams are. So I'm going to just use those. Okay, I've got scissors. I've got a chopstick here just to push out the corners. But if you haven't got a chopstick, a blunt end of a pencil will work quite well, rather than using your scissors to push out. And I don't know if any of you have had that awful mistake where you've pushed out a corner and the point of the scissor has gone through the corner. So avoid the scissors for pushing things out. Try and find a blunt instrument if you can. And I've got some tiny little snip scissors just for trimming threads and things like that. Okay, as I said, what we're going to do first of all is we're going to put the hearts onto our fronts, first of all, of our ticking, or our front of our chickens. Remembering we've got the bucket shape with the widest piece at the top. Now, I would say, I haven't given you an exact measurements where these are going to be placed, but I would eyeball it and get it near enough into the middle of each one. So you're going to just, especially if you line them up together, it's much easier for you to then think, right, I've got them near enough in the middle. If you want to, you can always use a tape measure and measure each side if you want to, but I just think if you just eyeball it, it'll be fine. I'm going to just put a pin in the middle just to hold it. So I'm just using a pin just to keep the heart in the middle of the body of the chicken. So I'm just doing that. And then I'm going to thread up some yellow thread. And all I'm going to do is a decorative stitch is I'm going to just do just a very simple little running stitch around the edge of that part. So we can all do a little bit of running stitch. And I'll start off. You will probably be catching up with me as I talk and threading. Now this could be, as I said, it could be a bit of embroidery thread, or it could be just some ordinary machine thread. Now, by rule of thumb, I never cut myself anything longer than perhaps just to my elbow. So I cut a piece of thread with just a single piece of thread, which is just turned over twice to my wrist, and then the rest of the length is just to my elbow. There is no point in having really long lengths of thread. You think, oh, I'll save time. I won't have to keep rethreading my needle. In fact, by the time you've pulled all that thread through, especially at the beginning, you would have that is the time that you could have rethreaded and put another load on. Plus, it can get a bit more knotted. The longer you take your needle and thread, the more chance it is it's getting knotted as you work. So to stitch, you put a pin in the middle there just to hold it in place. Now, I wouldn't start now at like at a corner. So I wouldn't start at the point here or up in the middle of the heart. I'm going to start on the side and about, I'd say about, maybe about, if we're talking millimeters, maybe 2-3 millimeters in. I'm bringing my needle from behind through. Or if we're talking maybe about 2/8 of an inch, something like that, 3/8, something, just a little on the edge, but not right on the edge, just in slightly, just because these stitches are just going to hold the heart to the body of the chicken. And we're just going to go in and out around with little running stitches, really simple, just going through, in and out. I'm going to pull it through. I'm going to pull it too tight, because if you pull it too tight, it's going to pull up the whole of that heart and just the pattern. So I'm just going to go around the edge. Don't worry if it goes a little bit wibbly wobbly. It all takes a bit of time, you know, with hand stitching. You have to almost like warm up with hand stitching. So it's quite nice. And I do like just really simple, just little simple running stitches. They can be really, really decorative, and they are effective. And I think they're, you know, anyone of any ability can do really nice with a bit of practice, some nice little running stitches just for decoration. When you've got most of it on, what I would say, just to save you pricking your thumb with the pin while it's in there, once you've got it established, that pin can come out because the heart's not going to move anywhere. And there's just one thing always when we put pins in things, all the thing we have to worry about is getting pricked and putting our blood, our DNA onto our work. So we just keep that out the way for the time being. We don't really need that little pin in there anymore. So I'm just working around that heart, working around, moving the piece of fabric as I go. And I bet there's some in the room that have already completed their heart while I'm still carrying on, because we all sew at different paces. So don't worry if you're ahead of me or if you're behind me. I'm just getting down to the tip and then come up. Now, as I'm coming up towards where I started, what I tend to do in my head, now don't get sort of like really like fixated on this, but I tend to think, how many stitches do I need so that I can almost finish equally where I start? So you can't see where you started and you finished. So I start thinking about, right, if I start pacing my stitches or leaving gaps between my stitches, I should have enough just with a breath so that you can't really see near enough where I started and when I finished. And then I just tie off at the back. I just do a little knot on the back just to tie off, remembering it doesn't matter too much if it's not neat and tidy on the back, because this is all going to be hidden. So that's my first one. I'm going to do another one now. So I'm going to thread up some more thread. Another thing I always do, I never cut my thread from my spool or from the reel until I've got the length, and then I also thread the needle before I cut it as well, because then that just makes sure that you've threaded the thread in the right direction, because there is a direction to thread. If you thread it from the end that you've just cut, sometimes it can have a tendency to knot up. So I just always make sure I've threaded my needle before I cut it from the reel or the spool that it's come from. So I'm just going to go working on the second one. Again, I started from the side of the heart there, and I'm just going to work around. Keep going round. What's nice of this project, it's a handleable size. It's not the piece of fabric that you're stitching on, and the heart that you're working on isn't a massive, great big thing. So it's really easy to just be able to get your hand and your thumb to hold it down. So then, as I said, once you've got near enough to round to almost coming down to the center of that heart at the top, I can take my pin out, so I'm not going to then prick myself with it. And just keep going.
Thought for a second we'd lost signal there, Gary, but no, just quiet.
We were all quiet.
We
were. I was just thinking, this is just a lovely thing to do on a Sunday morning. I don't know where, Rachel, with you, but it's lovely and sunny here today. I mean, it might be a bit cool, but it's a lovely sunny day. And so once I've already got planned, I know we're doing another Zoom class this afternoon, but I've got a couple of hours up to just have a little potter. It's a pottery day, I think. A pottery day in the garden, just having a little dig about or something like that. So I think that's what I'm going to do today. Okay, right, I've gone through. Let's see how everyone's doing with their heart. So that's almost like, I call that the first stage. That's almost like your decorative stage. And then I've got my 2 heart stitches. I'm going to we'll just see how you're all doing. Don't worry if you're only watching and you're not going to be taking part. You've done that. Who's that? That is Anne.
Not the Anne.
Still working on the other one.
Lovely.
Brilliant.
Thank you very much, Anne.
It's not sunny here. It's still dark. I'm in America too. I'm in Baltimore, Maryland. It's 6:30.
Well, lovely to have you, Anne.
Thank you.
If you've finished or you're nearly done, let me know.
Oh, Leslie. Okay, let's have a look at Leslie.
Leslie, yes. Nice. Leslie, you said you were going to use, is that your father's shirt? Yes. Oh, brilliant. Really nice idea.
Yeah, lovely. Hey, Vardy down there. Not seen you for a while, but she's back.
Hi, we
Carla?
have you too, so
Oh,
I feel your pain, but I've done my little heart. I don't know if you can see it.
yes, and then I'll come to Carla. So hang on a second. Let's
lovely.
spotlight you for
Thank you.
everybody. Lovely. Nice.
Oh, well done. I like it all cut out with the pinking shears. Nice.
Yeah.
Well, I was meant to be doing it with my son, but I forgot that he had rugby this morning, so it's just me.
Well, you can show him the YouTube and then do it later with him.
Yeah, we're definitely planning to do that.
Yeah, lovely.
I mean,
it's involved.
and this project is great, but I've just posted this morning. It's for all abilities. So if you've got your children with you, your grandchildren, they can do it. You can do it. It's just, I think it's accessible to everyone. So yeah, you're going to be teacher later today.
Yeah. Yeah.
Second one's in the goal.
Lovely.
Brilliant. Great. All right then. So what we're going to do, so we've got the hearts now on the front of our chicken bodies, as you say. So now we can start thinking about, first of all, we're going to put both the wadding and the lining, like the cozy bit inside. We're going to put them down onto the pattern pieces, and we're going to just stitch the lining, first of all, to the bottom of the, almost like the little leg cozy. But at the same time, we're putting the lining on the bottoms here. We're also going to attach the wadding as well. So I've moved these to one side. What I'm going to do is I'm going to just put the wadding. I mean, for my wadding, there's no right or wrong side. So I'm just laying it down there, remembering that I'm still looking at two buckets. So the wider bit at the top, the narrow bit at the bottom. I can then lay my bodies on top. So they're going to sort of lay dead on top, exactly the same. Now, if you're worried about them sort of shifting around, what you can do is just, for the moment, is just maybe just a couple of pins up here at the top, just to keep the wadding and the main body together. So we just so that it doesn't all sort of shift about when you're sewing it. I'm going to put that there and there. Then the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to then put, so I've put my wadding like this underneath, and then I put my little lining pieces, so it looks like that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to flip that up, and I'm going to put that there to there. So it's like right sides together. So I've got that, and I've got that, like so. And I've lined them up along the bottom. So they should, hopefully, if we've all been accurate with our cutting, they should be near enough. That line should be exactly the same width as the bottom of the bucket shape, like that. Then with some more pins, because what we're going to do is we're going to stitch a line along the bottom here. We're going to stitch a line along the bottom there. So I'm going to put some pins just through all of that. So the wadding, the bucket of the body, and the lining. So along the bottom, just to then hold it in place when I machine it. So I'm just going to put some pins. I tend to put my pins in, well, I'm putting them in like vertically rather than horizontally, because then I can just machine across the bottom there. So if I show up to the screen there, so I can just machine along the bottom, and then my pins aren't necessarily going to be in the way. I know a lot of people, and I see people, they put pins in maybe horizontally, but I always think, well, I've got to keep pulling those pins out as I sew. So I always just put my pins in that direction. So if I'm going to sew along horizontally, I put my pins in vertically. And sometimes, if it's not going to damage the fabric, the pins can be well away from your seam allowance at the bottom there. So I'm going to have just done that. So I'm going to leave one there. So it's just to keep you as a sort of reminder what that's going to look like. And now I'm going to machine a seam along the bottom here, just to join them. And I'll do one and then show you, and then you'll get the idea. The seam allowance is either 1 centimetre, and if we're working in inches, how does that work out? That works out to, I think, 1/4 inch. So let's just have a look. So on my tape measure, I look at 1 centimetre. Yeah, 1/4 inch. Around about 1/4 inch is perfect. So it's fine. And in fact, if you keep to the same seam allowance all the way round and everything that you make, it will be fine. But just not too wide a seam allowance, because obviously the wider the seam allowance, the smaller your chicken will become. So I'm just going to do a machine along there. I've got my machine by the side of me, so I might as well just bring it over here. I got that. And I'm just going to and as I said, I'm using black because I want you to see where my machine line is. But you'll use a colour that's obviously appropriate to whatever design or whatever color of the fabric that you're using. So I'm just going to stitch along there. And I start with the back stitch and I finish with the back stitch because then that just secures it. There's nothing worse than it coming apart. Now, if you're hand sewing, obviously really anchor your stitches here, and then you can just do, you could do a little tiny running stitch along the bottom here. You could do what we call a back stitch as well if you wanted to. It's just going to take you longer to do. And if you're doing hand stitching for this session, obviously carry on hand stitching and just watch the session, because obviously with a sewing machine, it's going to go that much more quicker. So there's my machine stitch. You can see that because I've done it in black. And if I then you can see that you've got the right sides underneath. So you're going to do that to both of them. So you're going to go straight across to both of them. So now I can do this one and I'm going to go straight across the bottom of that. So I'm going to just do that one for you. So if you're quite happy with that, carry on. Any questions, do ask if you're not quite sure.
I take this opportunity as well, lovely people, to say that when you have made your egg cozies, please do share them on our feed or your feeds on Instagram and Facebook, and just tag us in. So Gary Mills, is it Gary Mills Designs, or is it just Gary Mills?
Yeah, Gary Mills Designs.
That's it, Gary Mills Designs, and obviously at Crafty Monkeys. And then then that means that we'll get a notification, and then we can then share them to our stories and things. And they don't have to be on an egg, but you know, if you want to style them up a little bit, you know, put them on an egg.
I was very tempted today to go out and get a cream egg because I am a bit partial to a Cadbury's cream egg. I know, and I just knew that if I started on one, there wouldn't just be one. I'd have to get another one and another one. So I thought, no, abstain from the chocolate this morning, but I might be eating chocolate later on at the end of the day. Amazing. How's everyone got on with their seams? Are we all done to the bit? Well, we've done the bit across the bottom like that.
Let's have a look. Yeah, I think you can crack on, Gary.
Right. Okay, crack on. That's a welcome one.
Oh, you see. The jokes here as well. You see, you get the useless information and you get the jokes. Nobody else
you get a Rachel Pearman joke. Fantastic. Okay, so now look. Open them up like that, so you can finger press along the bottom here, so where the seam is. And I've not opened the seams like one going one way, one the other. They're going down towards me, so I've pushed them down towards me for now, so the seams are like that. Okay, so that's fine, but we've got to think about the little comb at this point and the beak. Now, if we look at the finished one, so if I give it a little look-at-y, is that the beak's here, the comb's here. But if you think, what we don't want to do is catch any of this in the corner, so you don't want that caught in the corner. And if you think you're going to be stitching a seam allowance all the way round, it's very easy. If I go to here, think, I'll just put my beak and my comb in exactly like that. But if you did that, what will happen is you will actually catch the majority of that in the seam, and it'll all get sort of like out of shape. So what you've got to do is almost like if your seam allowance is 1 centimetre or 1/4 inch, you move these little pieces back to that amount, or even just a little bit more. So if, for instance, I'm 1 centimetre seam allowance, I'm going to just move it to just over 1 centimetre in its position like that. So you can do that on your desktop like that. Then what you do is you flip them over like so, so they go inwards, because you need them to go inwards. So then as we sew around, when we've got this piece on there, that it's tracked. And so when we push it all forward, they pop out where they should be, there and there. So if you can get it looking like that, with almost like, for me, that's just over 1 centimetre square in that corner. So, and that will be a good guide to stop you getting it too far to the edge. So we're just going to put, and I'm going to put some pins in, just a couple of pins, just to hold those in position, because they do have a tendency, once we've started sewing all the way around, they have a tendency to move about or move off in some direction. So I'm just going to put a couple of pins again. I'm going to put them in like nice and sort of, well, that one's horizontal, those two are vertical, just to hold them in position. And you can see my little square in the corner there. So when I stitch along and down, I'm not going to trap these. They're going to pop out and they're going to be able to see them like the original one that I've got here. So if you can all do, just get that into position. I'll give you a minute, and then I will talk about, we're going to then sew the whole thing out. We're nearly there. I can't believe how well this has gone already. So we're nearly at a point where it's almost going to come together. So we've only got one more lot of sewing, well, 2 more bits of sewing to do, and then it's done. So they're quite quick to make, really. Once you know how, they won't take you very long. Okay, hopefully you've all pinned that in position. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip right sides to right sides. I'm going to put one on top of the other, like so. I'm going to line it up as best I can. And a good point where you can line it up is just where you've got your join seam here. So you can line it up there. And if once you've lined it up, my suggestion would be pop a pin in so that you know that that's not going to shift around. Move over to the other side and just shift that around so that you've lined up that seam down there. You might want to put a couple of pins in the corners just to keep the corners all lined up. And be aware that maybe your wadding may have shifted. So if you look and you think, my wadding shifted a bit, my wadding is just come over a little bit further than my my fabric of the body, you may need to just trim that down. So sometimes I can see that, and wadding has a tendency to do that, has a tendency to like stretch and grow. So you can just like, if you need to, just trim a little bit away. You can always do that if it's just like slightly gone a little bit bigger than what it should be. So you can do that. Now, when we look at the bottom bit here, we definitely need a pin. Let's put a pin at the top here. And if we're going to sew the whole thing out, we need to make sure that we've given ourselves a space or a part which isn't stitched so that we can pull the whole thing through. Now, on the pattern, you'll see that I've given you a little indication on the side there where we're going to leave this open to pull it through. So what you can do is line that up onto your pattern, and either with a little nick with a pair of scissors or a pen or pencil or a couple of pins, just leave a couple of marks there just to remind you that you're going to keep that open. You're not going to close that with stitches. So you can just put maybe just a couple of pins there and there if you want to. Okay, so I've done that. So I've not covered the whole things in pins, and I think sometimes we can over pin stuff and they just get in the way. But as long as the thing is stable when we stitch through. So I'm going to start from here. I'm going to use my seam allowance, which is 1 centimetre or 1/4 of an inch, all the way round. When you get to this corner here, be careful because you're going over quite a few layers of fabric. Also, the tendency will be for the one underneath to go one way and one on the top to go another. So try and keep them laying flat. You're going to come up to the corner, you're going to keep your needle in the corner, and then you're going to stitch across here. Now, you should be, by that point, stitching over the felt comb and into the beak, so take care as you go there. In the corner there, leave the needle in, turn, and stitch until you get to the end here, to that point there. I'm going to do that on my black thread. If you're still not quite sure, you can wait for me to finish and I can show you and then you can do it. But I'm sure a lot of you will have understood what I've just said. But if you want to wait, you can. So I'm just going to stitch round carefully. And I start with a front stitch and then a forward stitch, then back stitch. So I'm anchored. And I'm going to work my way round. Remembering when I get to the join here where we've joined the lining to the outer body, that we make sure that it all goes in underneath. Sometimes I put my finger there just to make sure I go over that bump. If it gets particularly really difficult to go over that bump, what sometimes is better is to go back over, so go backwards. And a back stitch tends to go through more layers of fabric than a forward stitch. But it's not, I didn't find it too bad, it was okay. So when I get to the corner up here, I'm going to leave my needle in, I'm going to lift my foot up and just turn it, and then carry along the top. Now I'm heading towards my little details, that little chicken comb. So I'm going to go over that quite carefully, making sure I caught that I'm getting to the corner, I'm turning again, and now I'm going to catch in the beak, and I'm going to come down. And when I get to the next point where my opening is on the lining, I'm going to stop, do a couple of back stitches just to secure it, and then take it away. Trim all the loose threads, and then take out my pins. So I'm taking out the pins from the top, the ones I can see. I've got to remember that there are pins inside which are holding the beak and the comb down. I'm going to just check that they are caught in nicely. So I've just checked that. All the seams seem to be caught in. I've not got that, none are not, because it's very easy not to catch them in. And I'm guessing at this point, when I've stitched round, I'm just going to trim the little corners just to cut down on the bulk in the corners. So I'm just trimming a little triangle from each of those corners. I'm not cutting into the stitching, but I've just cut a little bit of the corner away, and that just helps with the bulk. I'm going to leave like that for a minute, and we can all get to, hopefully we'll get to the same point. Okay, so hopefully you've all got to this point like so. And you can see that I've got my gap here, which is I'm going to pull through. And this is the best bit, because then we have the grand reveal. But what I've got to remind you is that you've got up here, if you put your fingers in there, you'll be able to feel the pins, which are still holding the little comb at the top and the beak. I would suggest, if you can, is to just take the pins out, because when you're pulling it through, again, as I said, pins have this awful tendency to want to prick you and make it, we'll get some blood on the work. So we don't want to do that. So we're going to just, I know I put 3 pins in, so I'm going to get rid of my pins first of all. And then you can just pull through. Now, hopefully you've left a big enough gap to get all that through. Don't overforce it, just take your time pushing it through, because it is bulky. There's no reason to, you don't need to clip around the seams at all or anything like that, because your seams aren't that big and bulky, and even around that curve, they're still not that big. So then you should be able to start to push that through and around. And starts the grand reveal. Now at this point, so I've got, if I lay it down, you can see I've got the whole chicken is starting to come to shape. I've got, and his little beak sticking out, and I've got all but it's looking quite rounded here. This is the point where you use a blunt object like a chopstick or the blunt end of a pencil, and you just go in and then just push those corners out slightly. You're not going to get them completely square, but you're going to get them out a little bit more. So you can just use a little blunt object, but don't use your scissors. The thing is with scissors is it will tend to come all the way through when you give it a little bit of force. But then you've got a nice, you should be able to start to see your shape of your chicken start to come together. So we've got that there. I'm going to put and I just roll it with my fingers, just roll around the edge. If you've got an iron near, you can always just, if you want to press your lining, your inner lining, you can. But to be quite honest, really, you just need to just finger press it and just roll it with your fingers. You can see I'm just rolling it with my fingers just to finger press all the seams. And in fact, because you don't press it with an iron, you know, it keeps it nice and sort of like spongy and soft. I think sometimes irons, you know, especially on things that I've got wadding in and or stuffing, that can tend to make it so like flat, and you don't want it to be flat. You want it to be nice and sort of like bouncy. So anyway, we're going to just finger press it all the way around, and then we're going to have a little look at the little opening. So we should have a little opening like so, like that. So I'm going to just let you all push out your chicken shape, and then we're going to look about how we're going to close that, because we don't want that open anymore. So we're going to close that. And in fact, I'm going to close mine on the machine. You can hand stitch it closed if you want to, but it's inside and no one's going to see it. So you might as well, you could close it with the machine. So I'll show you how to do that in a minute. Hopefully you've got to this point here. So you've got your chicken all pulled out and you've just finger pressed all around the outside, but we've still got this gap to fill in. So what I do is, again, with my fingers, I'm just going to turn each side of that in just a centimetre or a quarter of an inch or whatever. So I'm just going to turn it in with my fingers. So I'm just turning it into the edge, and then I'm going to just finger press it, or you can press it with the iron, but really it's not necessary. You can just finger press it. You can put a little pin in just to hold it. Now, what you could do is you could just like hand stitch that together, or if you've got a machine, which I have got a machine, unbelievably, by the side of me, I'm just going to close that with just a straight stitch on the edge of that. So I'm going to almost like do a top stitch around the edge. So I'm just going to top stitch round the edge, backwards and forwards. I'll show you because you'll be able to see it, because I'm going to do it in black, so you'll be able to see exactly what I've done. And back. Let's get scissors. And there we are. So there, you can just see down the edge there, I've just closed that little gap with just some stitching. So you can either do it with your machine, or if you feel you want to just hand stitch that with some slip stitches, you can do that. That's fine. But now, once you've closed it, then you can push that lining inside. So I'm literally just going to pull the chicken bottom there, at the bottom of that bucket shape down there, and I'm just going to push it, open it up, and I'm just pushing the lining in, and I'm just rolling back the inner lining so that you can't see it at the bottom. And again, I wouldn't necessarily give that a sharp press with an iron. You can literally just finger press that, and then he's almost done. I say almost because we've just got, well, I'm going to just show you how to give him an eye there, but then that's done. So if all of you just, even if you feel, oh, I'll come back and close that gap, you can do that. But if you want to just close the gap inside and then push that inside, and then if you just, if you want to do a French knot for an eye, if you've never tried a French knot or you want to have a go, what you need is some either some embroidery thread, which is maybe 3 or 4 strands thick, or a piece of this perlé strand thread. I would say it needs to be a thickish thread rather than thin sewing thread. So if it's just got a fine sewing thread, perhaps if that's all you've got at hand, maybe you might have a small button, either a little shirt button, a little white shirt button, or a black shirt button. You could use that, or a little bead. Or, I mean, if you just want to leave him without an eye, that's fine. That's fine. You don't have to put an eye on it, but it's just a nice way of just sort of like finishing it. I'll just let you finish the inside and push it all in. And then for the last minute, I'll just show you how to do a little French knot. But I just got myself a bit of black embroidery thread, my perlé thread, not too long. And all I've put in the bottom on the edge is one single knot. Don't make it a big knot, because I'm going to show you how to pull the knot through the side, and you're going to make the knot disappear inside. Then we're going to make French knots for the eyes, and then we're going to bring it up through, and we're going to make where we cut it off disappear also. So we're just going to do that. I'm going to leave that to the side. I'll check and see. I'm going to have a little look at you, see how you're doing. You're all heads down working. Fantastic.
This is too cute, Gary. Honestly, it's so cute.
It's so
I love
cute. It's
it.
so simple. It is so simple, but so cute. So yeah, and I'm really pleased with the pattern. And actually, I'll show you in a minute. I'll show you all the other styles that you can create. So I'll do that at the end also. Okay, so shall we have a go at a French knot? Any of you that want to have a go, have never done a French knot for an eye or anything like that, maybe have a go if you've threaded up, or just watch me and I'll do one, and I'll do one each side, and then we can always talk about it afterwards. And you can find a little diagram online anyway how to do it, but it's quite nice and it's so effective. I love French knots, like I love just ordinary running stitch. I just think they're some of my go-to sort of embroidery stitches that just sort of like I think work really well in lots of things. So I've got a single knot on the end of this thread. So my eye is going to be up here in the corner. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in through the side, almost like coming through the side in the seam, and I'm just going to come up to the point like in where I want the eye to be. So I've come in through the side seam and I've brought my needle up through the side. Because I've only got a single knot, what I can do is then just give that thread a little bit of a tug, and the knot disappears in through the seam, and is now, the knot is somewhere inside there. Don't pull it so hard that you actually pull it out through, especially if you've got an open weave thread, sort of fabric. If your fabric is quite sort of more of an open weave, what you can do is when you do that little trick and you pull it, the whole thing just comes out through where you've just pulled the needle through. So be careful. All right. So to do a French knot, what I say is you want to hold your needle and thread in your dominant hand, so the hand that you sew with. So we're all like left and right handed. And then you use your non-dominant hand. So for me, that's my left. And I'm just going to hold the thread, and I'm going to hold the thread quite sort of only probably about maybe an inch away, you know, 3 centimeters away from where I'm going to be working. So I've got the thread there. Then I'm going to use this needle to like just wrap around the thread. 1, 2, 3. And if I feel confident, I might go for 4. And then I'm going to then slide those little wraps around that needle. I'm going to slide it nearly down to the point that they don't drop off. And then I'm going to put the needle back through. I'm not going to put the needle directly into the hole I've just come out of, but maybe just to the side of it. So I'm going to go through, and I'm going to come out now. I'm going to come out the other side, because I'm going to make an eye the other side. And I'm going to just, and I've got my, you can see I've got my finger and thumb there, so I'm not going to let it go completely. And I'm going to just let that gently come through. And then that gives me a lovely beady little French knot eye. I'll do the other side. So let's just watch again. So I'm going to hold the thread in my non-dominant hand, as in the loose thread, and my needle and thread in my hand for sewing, as I normally would. But the secret is to only hold the thread probably about 3 centimeters to an inch away from where I'm working. I'm then going to wrap it 1, 2, 3. And if you feel more confident about this, you can do it 4 times. Obviously, the more times, I'd say the max is 4, but you'll get a bigger, chunkier knot the more times you wrap round. If you wrap round twice, you'll get a very small knot. If you wrap round 3, medium, and 4 is probably your max. Now, I then push those little, as it's wrapped around the needle, down almost to the edge of the needle. I'm then going to put the needle in, which now it's going into the side of where I've come out. And then I'm going to come back. So I'm now positioning, I'm inside the, like where the body of the top here of the chicken, and I'm going to come back out through the side seam this time. So I'm going to come out back through the side seam. My knot is secured. So I've secured my knot. And now I've got an eye each side. And then what I'm going to do is I'm really going to just almost like just knot really close into the seam, so that knot actually can then disappear, and you can't see it because I'm going to lose that knot into the seam like that. So that's how you do it. If you've never done it, if it goes wrong, you just cut it away, just cut the knot off, and then you can start again. The whole knot will just come away. It's not going to damage anything, and it's not going to stay there permanently. So if the knot goes wrong, you can start again and do that. Have a go. Let's see how we do. Or if not, put some buttons on, or some of you, I'm sure, will come up with other ideas what you can do for eyes and things like that. So that'd be quite nice. Has anyone got any questions? I'm going the right family.
Oh, love it, Ruthie.
On a pincushion.
No cream eggs.
No cream eggs in this house.
Oh, lovely, Ruth. Thank you.
That was
That's so
brilliant,
good.
Gary. See you later.
Yes, you will see us in the Baker Boy hat
I
later.
am.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Go and
Of course,
cut it out.
Brilliant. Thank you, Ruthie. We've got Leslie.
Oh, well done, Leslie. That's lovely.
Yay, that's so lovely.
Leslie,
lovely.
new.
It's quite cute. And I've got.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah.
That's so cute. Leslie, how many are you
Nice.
going to make? How many are you making?
Just one for now.
One for today. You go mass production.
No, might make 2.
Might
Yeah.
make 2. Yeah.
Lovely.
One for each. For Easter Sunday on the table.
Yeah.
That'd be really cool. That's good. Well
Thank you,
done.
Leslie.
Thank you.
Leslie.
You're welcome.
Bye. Bye.
Carla?
Oh, yes.
Oh,
It's mine.
love it.
I'm going to
Lovely.
make another 3. So
Yes.
hopefully 4.
Yeah, so lovely. They're so cute, aren't they?
Oh, they're really cute. And thanks, Gary. It's really lovely, a lovely session this morning. I really enjoyed it. Thank
It's
Oh.
so easy, isn't it? It's just a nice,
really-
easy little session. Yeah.
I thought, how are you going to get that lining, which is a different shape, to the top? But yeah, it's really good. Really clever.
Now you understand.
Yeah, it's lovely. It's lovely. Thank you very much.
Yeah, oh,
You're
bless
welcome.
you. Thank you so much, Carla. Let's go to Bardi. There we go.
Oh, wow.
Pretty. Nice, nice. There we go,
Oh,
Tracy.
great to see. I like. Is that a chip? What's on your fabric? Is it little bears?
Yes, it's Winnie the Pooh.
It's.
Oh.
There you go.
Hey,
Ah.
Anne.
Classic.
Well, nice colours as well. That
Yeah.
lovely fabric.
Yes,
Beautiful.
lovely.
Well done.
Sarah.
Oh, Sarah, how did you get on, Sarah? That looks great. Really good. How did you find the be able to see and the lesson? You know, did you, because you've not done Zoom before?
No, I haven't. So I was, you know, kept up just about.
Yeah, you did quite well. Yeah, lovely. Really well.
Yeah.
Good.
Do you think you'll
Very
do one
sweet.
again, Sarah?
Oh, definitely. I've got a little stack of fabric. I'm going to make a little family of them, I think.
Yeah, lovely. And do you think you'll do a Zoom again?
Yes, yeah. I've been sort of quite tentative about doing one, but it was nice to have a little practice go today. That was lovely.
Absolutely. Yeah,
That's a
absolutely.
good way
No,
to do
good.
it. Thank you.
Well, thank you,
very
Sarah.
much.
Thank you. And we've got Sarah.
Oh, wow. That is a nice
Lovely.
bright one. You've done the French knot as well?
I'm trying. The material, it's my husband's old shirt, but the material's quite sort of loose weave, so I've lost one of my knots inside. So I'll do a couple more.
What you can do is now go through to you can go back to the other side and do a knot on top of the knot. You see what I mean? So you can go back through and then you can knot on top of that knot and you'll be fine then. Sometimes, that happens.
That's a good idea.
Yeah,
thank you.
do that. Okay.
Yeah. Angela.
Angela, oh wow, that's lovely.
That is lovely.
I haven't done the eye yet, but I'll do that in a second.
Yeah.
That's very sweet.
Good.
Thank you.
And Sarah, is
Well
that a storage for crafts unit behind you?
It is, yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's an amazing unit. Yeah, I demonstrated those in my time.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's good.
lovely. Well done. Well done.
Thank you.
Well, lovely people. Thank you so much for joining us today. Mary, how are you feeling? Not too jet lagged? You're okay. You're muted, so I can't hear you, but I think you're saying you're okay.
Good.
Yes, she's okay. She's going to go to work now. Well, listen, Mary, I hope that we see you on a class. I hope you've enjoyed your little Zoom. I mean, it's a very simple thing today, but you've got a feel now of what it's like to be at a Zoom. So I'm hoping that we'll see you again.
Oh, yes. It's lovely.
Yeah, good. And I hope that you make a little chickie and that we see one as well at some point. And lovely, and thank you to everybody else who has joined us today. Lovely to see some regular faces as well as the new ones. People have been saying really great class here soon, and thank you to Gary for doing this lovely class.
Don't forget, if they want to, all the sizes, so all different ones. So if you want to make the other sizes, like there's really big daddy ones with like cockerel towels and stuff like that, they are on in the shops, so you can make more than just the one size. You've got all the other ones which you'll find in the Crafty Monkeys shop, and the link is on my Instagram page and is on, if you go directly to Crafty Monkeys, you can find lots more of the pattern itself. So you've just done the tiny one, but there are loads, there's a whole family to make. If you've really enjoyed them and you want to have all different sizes and all different variations, go to the shop. You'll see more in there as well.
Yeah, CraftyMonkies.com, and then there's a filter, and actually to make it easy, we're putting designers now together. So if you go to the filter and you type in Gary Mills, you will see all of Gary Mills' patterns, and he's got loads of other things for you to try with videos as well. So you can have a look there in the pattern shop. Right, lovely people. Well, listen, I hope you all have a lovely Sunday, the rest of a good day, whatever you're doing. Hope to see you again. And if you come this afternoon, we'll see you this afternoon. And if not, as I say, this will be on YouTube in the next few days, so you can watch again. Thank you all, lovely people. Take care.
Bye, everyone. Bye.